Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead with the Austin Real Estate. Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead with the Austin Real Estate Investing Podcast. And today we have another awesome guest on for you here. We have Jason Drees, who's a performance coach, a real estate investor, an author, and a big time adventurer. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Hey, Jordan. I'm doing good. How are you doing, man?
Doing great. Hey, great to have you back on. I know we had you on, I'd say a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and then I was on your podcast. What was that, a month ago?
A couple of weeks ago, actually. Well, yeah, it aired a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. A few weeks
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. About a
Yeah,
month ago.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of people reached out to me and said, "Hey, I saw that. That was awesome."
Nice.
So, really, before we get started here, the most important question we ask, though, Jason, what's your favorite restaurant in Austin?
My favorite restaurant in Austin is Three Forks.
Three Forks?
Three Forks.
That's an awesome place. It's
They're-
steakhouse downtown, really good
Yeah.
food, good atmosphere. Also a big fan of that.
They got the Wagyu ribeyes. They're amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of great stuff. So
Yeah.
for people who don't know, and I don't think that's many of our listeners here, but who are you and how are you involved with real estate investors?
Well, I'm a performance coach. I'm a mindset coach, and I run a coaching company called Jason Drees Coaching. I'm author of a book called Do the Impossible and also the host of the Do the Impossible podcast. And I've been professionally coaching for over 10 years now, and I basically help people do impossible things. And thanks to this guy with a beard, I started getting more access to real estate. I've been working with a guy with a beard for almost 5 years now. And because of that, I coach a lot. I'd say probably 80% of JDC clients are actually real estate investors.
Yeah, no, and I know you've done amazing things with this bearded guy. So I believe you're referring to Brandon Turner.
Yes, I'm referring to Brandon Turner. Yes.
He had an amazing breakthrough and it's just blown up with real estate investing. So, let's just dive into real estate investors and some of the blocks they have and how you can help them get past those. So I know with myself, I'm looking to buy a mobile home park right now. I've done all the research. I know a lot about them. Not a lot about them. I know enough about them to start making offers. And I was kind of just stuck. But then we talked on your podcast. That's all we did. And I started making offers the day after. So what do you help real estate investors with that just changes them from inaction into action?
Well, I remove the resistance to the action.
Mhm.
That's what I do. A lot of times we get kind of caught up in our heads about the process, about the failure, potential of failure, about risk, about the past, because our brains are literally cataloging everything we've done in it prior to now. So your brain is not designed to make you a successful real estate investor. Your brain's designed to keep you alive. So it's literally comparing every next step forward to every step you've done. And as you grow and expand, you're going to start to doing bigger and bigger things. And like for yourself, you went from single family to multifamily and to mobile home parks, right? There was a shift there. It's still real estate investing, but it was also a new section, right? So sometimes we can think that new is different or challenging, and we end up losing our momentum, our strength, because we think we're starting over, and we're not really starting over. We're just pivoting or adding to our current expertise.
Yeah, I think it's so hard. Everybody wants to go to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and
Yeah.
maybe from 2 to 4, but like you're talking about, it's real similar, but that big shift from 2 to 20,
Yeah.
it's really hard to get your head around. And I think talking to somebody like you can help a lot with that.
Yeah. Well, any mindset coach can help, right? And it's because we're at a time right now where we are, some people call it a recession. Interest rates are up. The economy is doing different things, but the simple way I like to describe it is what worked before may not work now. And that's causing a lot of real estate investors to freeze because we've had summertime for the past 10 years. It's easy to make money. And now all of a sudden we're in a different season, which requires a different strategy. So everybody's freezing in place and stopping. When it doesn't mean you need to stop right now because it's a different season. It just needs a different strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to look at all the media out there and say, "Oh, things are bad. I shouldn't do anything." And frankly, you and I are in some of the same groups, and we hear all the same stuff of, hey, just sit back and wait, don't do anything. And
Mhm.
I have a lot of trouble with that myself. I always want to be doing something, but like you just said, the same thing I was doing last year might not work this year. And it's been that quick of a shift because interest rates have gone up so much. So, what are the biggest issues you see real estate investors running into from being frozen to getting to the point where they can take action?
Well, I think the biggest, they're not sure what to do, right? They're not sure what to do, so that there's a lot of reaction to what's going on. So I think the biggest obstacle from being frozen to getting back into action is literally getting out of reaction, because a lot of people are looking at interest rates or banks or the housing market or whatever, and they're having an emotional reaction to it, typically fear, uncertainty, and they're almost kind of forgetting how they got here, because any real estate investor had to try something new. Any successful real estate investor had to work hard to get here. And when they first started, they didn't know what they were doing, but they made it through. So what really needs to happen right now is they need to get back to those basics of focusing on success, being determined to make it happen, finding a way. Because those that can get back to the basics and really focus on, hey, I'm going to be successful regardless of any market conditions or interest rates. If that's the mindset you're operating in from, then that's the life you're going to experience. If we fast forward 5 years, when we're seeing the new social media influencers pop up and they're interviewing everybody about 23. Remember 23 when things, 22, 23, we had that recession? Like, most of the people around us are going to be statistics and of the interest rate in the economy. And some of them are going to be standouts. And the difference are those that can get out of reaction right now, process the reaction, and build the mental toughness to become confident and certain that you're going to be successful no matter what. If you can build that confidence in your mind, then you'll be successful.
So, you said a lot of what you sounded like overcoming fear to me.
Yeah.
And I know having confidence is a big deal for overcoming fear. Do you think some people mistake the confidence for or the cockiness for confidence? And how do they tell the difference between that, in your opinion?
Um, I don't know. Like, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right?
Yeah.
But success starts internally. It starts in the mind. That's where it starts and goes outward. And a lot of times we end up thinking that the confidence will come up after we're successful, or we'll think that the financial scarcity feelings will go away when I have money. But it's actually backwards. The successful results will show up when you have success in your mindset. The money will show up when you no longer feel financially scarce in your mindset. And one of the biggest challenges is battling the emotions, the impact that the external things have on us, and creating certainty regardless of the external situations. That's actually exactly what I do. So if people are struggling and lacking confidence, it's because they have beliefs that are preventing them from being confident. So what I do is I help remove the contradictions so the confidence shows up.
Okay. So I remember from your book too, Do the Impossible.
Mhm.
You talk a lot about, how do you change your mindset? And you have a very specific way of talking about it. So everybody talks about changing mindset, but you have a different way that you present that. Could you go over your whole really system of helping people change their mindset and frame shifting and those types of things?
Well, I can share a little bit. I can't do it on this call. It would take too
Well,
long.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But basically, your mindset is created by you, right? And most people don't realize that. Our hands take action. Our mind controls our hands. But what controls your mind, right? You control your mind. So the way we start to get to change our mindset is, number one, we have to take ownership of it. And when you take ownership of your current mindset and you can focus on a new mindset, then you can start to shift it. And depending on which mindset it is, you can use belief change processes or my a process I created called frame shifting. But it really comes down to the ownership aspect because most people are operating at the level of their mindset of like, okay, this is the mindset. I'm feeling limitation or financial scarcity. How do I change this? And they're trying to solve it from the level of mindset. What they need to do is literally shift into the version of them where that doesn't have that resistance, because that resistance is based on an old point of view, an old perspective, an old memory that's running right now. Now you can have a reaction to that old memory, or you can sit with it and go, oh, that's an old memory, and just create a different point of view. Because the easy way to think about a new mindset is to think about a new point of view. But changing mindset on your own is easy once you know how to do it. It's taking me multiple decades to figure out how to do it. So coaching is the easiest way to change mindset.
Mhm. Yeah, and I really liked, you talked about just shifting your frame.
Yeah.
And you basically having, when you can do that, you can basically create a completely new mindset. And it's so powerful for overcoming things like analysis paralysis, which I think is where a lot of people get stuck. Maybe they learn about real estate investing and they say, oh, I want to buy a duplex for my first property. I'm going to live in half and I'm going to rent half. Really super easy strategy. Everybody should do something like that to get started if you're able. But they get stuck in, well, what if I'm missing this little piece of information? They run the numbers and they run the numbers and they run the numbers. They don't take action on that one and it goes away. And that happens 10 or 15 more times. And eventually they're just tired of not seeing any results. And either they buy a bad deal or they just move on. That's such a hard place to be for so many people. I know being stuck in analysis paralysis is one of the hardest things for most newer real estate investors, and shifting the mindset.
It is absolutely right. But what analysis paralysis is they're focused on the wrong, they're focused. If someone's in what we call label analysis paralysis, meaning they cannot leave the analysis stage of the process, right? It's an indication they're trying to control something they can't control. Nine times out of 10 with real estate investors, it's usually they're trying to control the risk and they're trying to guarantee success. But you can't guarantee success in real estate investing. Like, you're a successful real estate investor. You've been doing it for years. And even you doing the same thing you've done for years doesn't guarantee the next one's going to have a success. You could have a tornado. You can have a garbage truck run into your house, right? Like, it's like anything can happen. So analysis paralysis typically happens because they're trying to calculate the risk out of the equation, and it's impossible to do that because investing is inherently risky. So the thing that I usually advise new real estate investors who are stuck in analysis paralysis is, like, you need to identify your risk tolerance level. Like, how much risk are you willing to take? And because most people will like to calculate the upside. Oh, when this wins, I could do this, or I could flip this, or I can STR it, or they'll like to do the upside. But do they do the downside? Well, what's the worst case scenario? If I lose my pants on this, can I recover? So if you calculate your risk tolerance and what risk you're willing to accept, then you're going to be able to go into deals and be able to start moving forward, because risk analysis paralysis is really trying to control something that you can't control, and we can't control other people.
Really good insight. It's a different way to think about it. It makes all the difference.
It does. Yeah. Because you can only control you. And in a real estate deal, there's multiple people involved. So you cannot control the person. That person could look like a great tenant, but the second they get the job, their company shuts down and they lose it. You cannot calculate that. You can't. You can only do your best to prepare for it.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make that have held them back and not getting over and being comfortable with the risk? So, I know you pass on deals. I passed on so many deals, and I've looked back later on and said, man, I should have bought that deal because I just was just almost not there.
Yeah.
But what have you seen that cause people to do, or how has that slowed down their career, maybe until they've come in contact with you? Have you heard any stories about stuff like that?
Well, I would say, not hiring a coach is probably a big mistake, especially right now. Because like if
Mhm.
you want to be at your best, have a coach on your team. A coach will help focus you, make sure you're not repeating past mistakes and those sorts of things. The other thing is like, are you learning from your mistakes? So there's that deal you wish you bought, you didn't buy it. Okay. That past is done. You can only move forward. So dwelling on the past isn't going to help, but learning from it is absolutely something you should do. And I also suggest, looking at it from an intellectual point of view and also an intuition point of view, because your intuition is also involved. If you can put aside the potential cash flow upside, it's much easier to dial in whether this is a good opportunity or not. And one of my favorite questions to help uncover intuition is to ask, like, if success was guaranteed, would you still do it?
Yeah, I love that question.
Because sometimes if you may feel like, oh, that's a good deal, and you're like, I don't know, if success was guaranteed, would you still do it? You may have resistance, and it could be the buyer you don't like, or there could be something better coming along, and you're going to waste a bunch of time on this deal, and the next one's better.
Totally true. So, Jason, I know for a lot of people listening right now, they're saying, well, all this sounds awesome, but I'm just getting started. Maybe I don't have the resources to hire a coach, but I know you have a few different ways that you help people. Can you explain all the different
I don't.
resources that you have available for
Well, I have a
people?
lot of resources, but I don't believe they can't hire a coach. A coach is a few $1,000s. Come on.
Sure.
If you can't find a few $1,000s, then how are you going to buy a house?
Mhm.
So that you can also buy books. I also do a group coaching program called Mindset Academy.
Mhm.
But everybody I've spoken to, if you ask them when they started coaching, do they wish they would have started sooner? Every one of them said yes. Now, I started coaching 10 years, 12 years ago. Do I wish I started sooner? Absolutely. Because the sooner you start coaching, the faster you're going to go. And whether you hire me or someone else, it doesn't matter. Like I'd love for you to hire me, but I'd love more if you get into coaching, because that's going to help you grow and expand. And it's really, investing in yourself is hard for a lot of people. But the sooner you get aligned, the faster you're going to go. Because if this is your target over here and you're aimed at this direction, if you're aimed over here, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're never going to hit it. So people don't realize that what happens when you get into alignment, when you get focused. So that's why coaching is such a powerful tool. That's why, you know, I've got 4 coaches I use.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I've got 4 different coaches. What they do different things. I've got a mindset coach. I've got an energy coach. I've got a coach that helps me physically. I've also have a coach that helps with me manage my nervous system. I think last year, you know, I probably spent, between me and my wife, and probably, $80,000 in coaching last year.
I believe it. It's crazy because, that number, if you talk to most real estate investors and said, would you spend $80,000 on real estate investing? They'd say, yeah, of course I spend that,
Yeah.
way more than that every year. But I believe investing in yourself is always the best investment, because nobody can ever take it away, no matter what happens in the market or what happens with the government or anything like that. But it's so hard to talk somebody into spending $2,000 to go to a weekend seminar that might change your life. But they'll certainly put $2,000 into crypto and possibly lose it all tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Seminars are great. Seminars are a great way to get a short period of time. Like, cause invest $5,000 in yourself. Like, cause what people don't realize is that the answer they're seeking is most likely coming from a different version of them. So do you want to become that next version next month or in 5 years?
Cool. So I know when we talked on your podcast, there was a lot of that, the different version of you. Could you kind of go over just quickly your method for the different versions of somebody and how you use that to help them get into that frame?
Well, you know how sometimes when you're driving in the car and you hear a song that reminds you of like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever college was, and you're like, oh my God, or high school, you can remember something and you feel bad for something you did. You basically go back to an old version of you that feels bad, right? We've all done that. There's also versions of you in the future you haven't been yet. And we have the ability to direct our focus on anything. If we focus for long enough on the past and feeling bad, we will feel bad. If we focus enough on the future, we'll feel better. But what I figured out how to do is to focus into specific versions of ourselves, like one that can raise money, or one that's confident, or one that's fearless, or one that knows what to do. And when you start to use that ability to shift the version of you, which I call frame shifting, you can actually literally dial into a future version of you and bring that version there now. I discovered this process about 3 years ago, and it's basically the level above mindset. Mindset's hard to change because mindset's the source of mindset. But when you start to understand frame shifting and how to operate at the frame level, you can actually make these monumental leaps and start moving faster. And most people, the reason they don't leap that much is because they can't handle the transformation to that level. Like the amount of growth it takes to go from this version of you to this version of you is a lot. You got to process the emotions, the memories, and all of that stuff. So most people are growing and expanding at the rate they can currently tolerate. The mindset coaching that JDC does helps you process that exponentially faster. So we start to remove the roadblocks to success, because we live in an attraction-based universe. I don't help people create success. Like, I didn't help you make offers. I helped you remove the resistance to the offers occurring. So it's not about creating success. It's about removing all the mental resistance to it occurring, and then it shows up.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. And I think it's easy to look at somebody that's really successful and say, oh, they've always been that way, or they've always had that confidence or that way about them, or those skills, and they can always do that. And I've been lucky to know a lot of really successful people for 5-10 years, and see how much they've changed over time, even when I don't know them really well personally, but I've been observing them for a long period of time. I'm very observant as a person, and I can see these monumental changes in all these people. And it really does feel like they've removed all this resistance to what was actually already there. It's a really cool way to look at it.
Yeah, and people who haven't done the work think everyone else around them is born that way, but they're not. Everybody's done the work, and the people that have more money than you, more money than me, they've just put more consistent focus on making money than we have. And everybody that has less money than us, we've put more consistent effort around making money. And that's why we have more, right? And most people get shut down because of past failures or limitations, or it didn't work and they're stuck. But our potential is unlimited. The first step is getting in the game and deciding to not give up no matter what. And then when you start moving, then coaching can help focus you and get you aligned so you can start to play at your full potential. And that's really what I love to do, is really see what my full potential is. That's really the level I like to play at.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll talk more about you here in just a second. So you're saying, hey, get in the game and then get a coach as soon as you can. Is your advice?
Absolutely. If you want to you get in the game, number one, and if you want to go faster, get a coach.
Awesome. I think that's great advice too. So, Jason, a little bit about you as a person. You've been a coach for over a decade now, yeah, at a high level. I know you've done a lot of other really cool stuff, entrepreneurial stuff. Could you talk about that a little bit? Just your businesses before coaching?
Oh, like what did I do before coaching? Well, Jason Drees Coaching has been in existence since 2013. Mm-hmm. Jason Drees Coaching, I was the only employee with Jason Drees Coaching until 2019. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, 2019, 2020. Now JDC I've got 9 coaches on my team, and I've got probably another 7 staff or so. Prior to that, I ran an outsourcing company in the Philippines for a year and a half. That was an interesting experience. That did cold calling, lead generation. I did a speaking business I've done. And then my first company was called 986 Incorporated, and we manufactured race car driver cooling suits. So we basically built these suits that had Camelback style bladders molded on them, and we pumped cold water through them in a race car to cool off the driver.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So your business has really exploded in the last few years. Was that from discovering this frame shifting idea here?
I don't know. It was all part of that, right? Frame shifting was part of it. Like when it started to explode at the end of 2020, was when I discovered frame shifting as the business was exploding. The Bigger Pockets podcast in Q3 2020 had a big role in that. That visibility boosted my visibility, and I just started prior to that, it was just me, and then literally within 90 days, I had 5 coaches. Wow. It blew up that fast.
That's amazing.
It just went from me to all of a sudden 6 staff in 45 days. Yeah, and I was in complete and total overwhelm because I had 65 clients I was managing. I had to build a coaching platform, teach my coaches, build a payroll system, and at the same time I was doing the first mindset, a 6-week mindset academy with Brandon Turner, and I was doing 4 1-hour sessions a week, and I was creating 2 hours of new content every single week for that. And my head was just spinning because, but at the same time, the money was just rolling in. I'm like, this is awesome, and I'm every day I'm like, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, and then I was in such total overwhelm that I could probably get 10% done of the things I wanted to do. And I had this, and I remembered, I'm like, well, like a month ago, before all this growth started, I was complete control. But if I took Jason from 10 years ago and brought him to a month ago, he would have been complete and total overwhelmed. So that told me that there's a version of me in the future that if I brought him here, he would know what to do. So I basically just imagined for a second that version of me in the future being here, and all of a sudden I felt lighter and all the stress went away and I got clarity. And I realized that was the very first time I did a frame shift. So the next day I was in overwhelm again, and I did it again, and like 3 or 4 times a day, because it was amazing growth, but it was growing 10x in 90 days is intense. So I was basically frame shifting constantly to keep myself out of that. And the funny thing is, if you go back through my Instagram and look at my videos, you see these big black bags under my eyes. And I remember like Elliot Smith reaching out to me, and he's like, "Hey, Jason, are you okay? You don't look so good." I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." He thought I was all strung out. I'm like, "No, no, no." He's like, he's like, "You don't look so good." "Oh no, I'm doing great, man. It was awesome." But it was a crazy, crazy period of growth.
Yeah, that hyper growth is extremely hard. I think everybody gets really stressed out and nervous when nothing's happening.
Yeah.
But it gets really hard when there's a massive amount of things happening at once too.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't ever experience that, so that's awesome.
Well,
You
yeah,
got past it.
and most people are in resistance to it and they don't know it.
Yeah. So if you had to start over today, if you had to start your whole business over today, what would you do differently? Just scale the way you have.
What would if I started it all over today?
If you
I
knew
would,
everything you knew today and you started over,
before coaching, like
or
when I started coaching.
if you started coaching, but you knew everything that you know about coaching today, and you were going to grow the same business you have today, what would you do differently? Or if anything, maybe nothing.
I would, I would manage my time differently, and I would put some limits on my time that aren't there now, that I've kind of painted myself into a corner a little bit because of the way the business has grown with all these different pieces that I'm managing myself. So I probably would have been more consistent in the updating of my group coaching program. I also would have like spent more time doing partnerships instead of just trying to like knock on doors myself, because a lot of my growth has come from partnerships and new relationships versus me mastering the social media front of the funnel stuff. That just hasn't worked for me effectively so far. So it really like build more on relationships, coaching, and start at a higher frequency than I did before. Versus unless, start in abundance versus start in scarcity. That's probably the number one thing.
I would say those same things can be said for real estate investors too. Lean
Probably.
into partners earlier. Start with a bigger mindset just in the get-go, rather than I have to start here and make it tiny little incremental steps.
Yep. Yeah.
Really
That's a
cool.
great advice. Yeah.
It's fun, and it's all business. We look at real estate investing as somehow different. It's not really any different.
All the basics are the same, right? And now is definitely a time to focus on the basics.
Mhm. Yeah, so we talked about that briefly, that people had it so easy the last, you said 10 years, and I agree with you. So it was so easy the last 10 years. You
Mm-hmm.
really didn't have to do anything to be successful. You just had to show up and invest in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But now, focusing on the basics is so important.
Mm-hmm.
But not getting stuck in analysis paralysis or stuck in fear is also
Mm-hmm.
extremely important. If if you had one piece of advice that you wanted to leave listeners with, and we already talked about go hire a coach, but if you had one piece of advice, something to do to get to the next step in real estate investing, what would it be here today?
Um, good question. It really just comes back to make a decision to make it happen, right? A lot of times we can be unsure of the first step. Testing. I want this target. I'm gonna get this target if it's comfortable, as opposed to just making a decision. Like, pick a target of what you actually want and go for it. And don't let the interest rates or the economy affect you. Like, if you want a new property, if you want a mobile home park, if you want whatever that number is, that target is, like, make a decision and go get it no matter what. Figure out how. And because right now you need that decision, that resolve, that determination to push you through all of the current obstacles that are out there. So the number one thing you can do is have a strong, firm decision that you're going to hit the target, even if you don't know how. Because when you create a decision like that, that actually creates a frame shift. Because if I'm moving forward, I'll see if it works, or I am going to make it happen, or I'm going to drop dead trying. Right? There's a difference of certainty. Those are different frames. So the number one way right now is to keep moving on. And I would say, like, go after what you want. Like, don't play small, play big, but you can do this, right? And I would ask myself every day, am I going to be a statistic or a standout?
Really good advice. Love that. I think that, something similar has happened for me. I made the decision, hey, we're going to buy a mobile home park this year. And you certainly helped with that in our quick coaching session on your podcast.
Yeah.
And I was having such trouble cold calling owners, which sounds like the worst thing ever, but I was trying to cold call owners of mobile home parks, and this wasn't getting through. I wasn't finding the right formula to find that person. But I just kept trying. I made the decision that it's going to happen today.
Yeah.
For some reason, something just hit, and I was getting call after call answered and talking to people and getting referrals to other people. Stuff was just happening.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you just make that decision, things start to happen.
Yeah, because that's your decision, is you're telling life, like, that's what you want, and when you ask for it, life will deliver.
Yeah, you put in the work too.
Yep.
So Jason, we talked about, you're an adventurer here before, and you've talked to me about some of the really cool stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
With off-road adventures. Can you talk about that here right now?
Yeah, I grew up off-roading in Southern California, and about a year and a half ago, I bought dirt bikes and a side-by-side before I realized there's no place to use them in Texas, which kind of surprises me, as big as this state is, that 95% of it is privately owned. It's like silly. So I've been and I love Baja, California. I spent a lot of time camping there over 20 years ago. So I found this company called Off the Grid Expedition that does tours, and I did a tour with them about 6 weeks ago. And I got another one coming up in about 8 weeks. And basically, I'm going to take my side-by-side drive out to San Diego, and we're going to drive off-road from San Diego all the way to Cabo over 8 days. And we're going to stop at different hotels and beaches along the way. But yeah, and I'm actually doing an event where I'm taking some people with me, but that's one of my biggest passions right now. And right now I'm looking at possibly taking two of my oldest sons with me on that trip too. So I think it's going to be a really, really fun experience for all of us.
That's awesome. Can you share anything about the event that you're doing, where you're going to take some people with you too?
Yeah, the one that I'm doing, I'm looking at a 5-day event where basically you start in San Diego and you get in a side-by-side, and this company rents them to you. So I have my own, but if you're coming, you don't have one, you can rent one. And basically you get partnered with somebody and you sit there, and we basically go 100 to 150 miles off-road every day. And the Can-Am Maverick side-by-sides, they've got like 190 horsepower and 24 inches of travel. They're turbocharged, 4-wheel drive. So you can go about, 40, 50 miles an hour over bumps this big, and it doesn't matter. So it's like you'll do like drifting, sliding. It's like so much fun. So, and then we go down by the Pacific Ocean, and then we stop and eat tacos, and then we go to the other side where we're going to see the Sea of Cortez too. It's going to be an awesome trip. Yeah.
Have you ever jumped one of those things?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So besides off-road adventures, what's next for you? What's the long-term vision for yourself and JDC?
I don't know. It's evolving. I have a lot of partnerships evolving right now. One of the things I'm doing is I'm launching some strategic partners out there. that for people that run paid masterminds or communities, I'm looking for working on some strategic partners out there to kind of help deliver coaching to their communities in a way that it benefits the members and the hosts of that. That's something I'm working on. We just moved in Austin. We moved from Cedar Park to Leander. We may be moving again actually in 6 months because our boys may be getting into a couple schools downtown. So we may be moving again in 4 months, but we'll see.
Wow, you're getting all over it. Exploring Austin. That's really cool.
We're getting all over. That's right.
So do you have any events coming up? Sorry, I didn't ask you about this before we got on the podcast.
As of right now, we don't have any
events
events on the calendar other than my Baja event. We don't have any events on the calendar. We just had an event last month, so we'll probably have a calendar pop on the calendar in the next 6 months sometime.
And where can people keep track of those events and what you guys do?
The easiest way is just my website, jasondreescoaching.com.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Jason, so do you have a favorite business or mindset book? I know Do the Impossible, your book is amazing. Everybody needs to pick that up and read it. Do you have another favorite business or mindset book that you like to recommend too?
Well, the book I've been recently read that helped me quite a bit had nothing to do with business, actually. It was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And that book is about, I don't know if you've read it, but it's about following your unique path in life. They call it like seeking your personal fortune is what they call it in there. But really it's like following your unique path in life. And it's a really good, if you get caught up in chasing money and work and success, it's a really good book to help reset your mindset around what life is really about. And when you get aligned with what the work you're really supposed to be doing, the success actually shows up even greater than before.
I'll have to check that out. You're not the first person to recommend it, but I have not read it. So definitely can order that book when we get off the call here.
It's a great book. Yeah.
Awesome. Jason, what's the best way for people to get hold of you? I know we talked about jasondreescoaching.com.
Yeah. You can go to you can go to mondaymindsetreset.com, mondaymindsetreset.com. I do a free 20-minute call every Monday at 10 o'clock Central. And if you go to mondaymindsetreset.com, that'll give you the calendar invite to go. It's a free Zoom call every Monday, 20 minutes. So every week I align your mindset at the beginning of every week.
That's awesome. And I know you're on Instagram too, right?
Also on Instagram, yeah.
At Jason Drees.
Jason Drees Coaching, that's right.
All right. Awesome. So make sure to follow Jason Drees at Jason Drees Coaching on Instagram, mondaymindsetreset.com. That's so amazing. We do that for free. Everybody jump on that.
Yeah.
Totally worth seeing. Jason, thank you so much for coming on here today. For anybody who wants to follow me, I'm at Jordan_Moorhead on Instagram. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.